Hi, I'm Daniel for Coder Prodigy, and in this video I'm going to teach you how you can create awesome colored animations in Scratch, like the one that you're seeing here on the screen. This flowery pattern consists of circles of different colors and they turn around, as you can probably see here on the screen. You can also control this effect with this slider over here, and you can turn these circles into petals of a flower that looks something like this. And you can change this effect as it runs, and you can change it in real time. So I'm going to show you how you can program this awesome visual effect in Scratch. Now, in order to create this awesome animation that I showed you here, you will need to go to scratch.mit.edu. This is the Scratch homepage, the website that you will use for programming this animation. And I'm going to ask you to create an account if you don't have one already. It should take only a couple of minutes, and if you need any help, ask an adult to help. After you create an account, I will ask you to go here at the top of the page where it says My Stuff on this folder icon and click this one. And this will get you to a list with all the Scratch projects that you've created so far. If you have experience with Scratch, this will be the homepage for all your projects. I have quite a few here. I teach a lot of kids to code here at Coder Prodigy. I teach them how to create games and animations and visual effects and so on and so forth. And also all the projects that I shared on the YouTube channel that you're watching right now. I'm going to ask you to click this button here where it says New Project. So click here. And this will create a new empty Scratch project, which will only have a single sprite that will look like a cat. So this is how the Scratch empty project looks like, as I'm sure you're aware. Now, once you select the sprite, the cat sprite, click on this trash can icon to remove it, because we're going to create our own sprite for this particular animation for this project. So I'm going to ask you to click on the paint icon over here. So hover over the cat icon and then click on the paint tool over here. So click on paint. And this is where you will create your own sprite. And we are going to create our own version of this animation that I showed you at the beginning. Now, once this sprite is selected, which I'm pretty sure it is, you will be directed to the costume editor. So we will create a costume here for our sprite. And I'm going to ask you to click on the brush icon over here, and we will draw 4 dots on the screen. And I'm going to ask you to increase the size of the brush, and I'm going to make it 20 here, and you will see a bigger dot hovering over the mouse cursor. So I'm going to zoom in, and in the middle here you will see a small cross. This is the center of the sprite, and I'm going to ask you to put 4 dots here at the top, bottom, left, and right side of the center of the sprite. So something like this. Now, if you feel that you've made a mistake, or if one of the dots is not where you want it to be, you can click on the pointer here and you can drag one of the circles either closer or further apart. For example, I'm going to make them a little closer. All right, so something like that, and I'm going to try to make sure they're as symmetrical as possible. So something like this, all right? Maybe a little bit upwards. Okay, so something like this, and this will be our sprite that we're going to continue animating for the rest of the project. So now we need to program the sprite. Now, in order to create that effect, we're going to have to create many clones of this sprite, and we're going to color them differently. Right now, it doesn't really matter that all of the dots are purple. We're going to make them look differently by changing the color effect on the sprite. But first, let's look at the direction or at the motion of this sprite. So first, I'm going to drag a block that starts with when flag clicked. So when the flag is clicked, we are going to program the motion of one single sprite, and then we're going to create many more sprites like this. All right, so here's what I'm going to do first. I'm going to go to the motion section, the blue section, and I'm going to drag this go-to block and I'm going to snap it inside. I'm going to say X0 and Y0. And if you learned something from the previous videos here at Coder Prodigy, X0 means the center of the screen with respect to the horizontal position, and Y0 is the center of the screen with respect to the vertical position, up or down. So X0 and Y0 means the exact center of the screen. So when I hit the flag, notice that our sprite is in the very center of the screen. Then I'm going to do this. I'm going to make the sprite very small, and I'm going to make it grow and rotate. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the purple look section, and I'm going to set its size to a given number. So I'm going to set its size to 1%. 1% means very, very, very tiny with respect to the original size of the sprite. So now if I hit the flag, notice that the sprite is almost invisible because it's so small. It's almost not visible here on the screen. But if you squint really hard, you can also see that. All right, and now we're going to make it grow and rotate. And I'm going to do that by adding a repeat section. So I'm going to go to control, and I'm going to drag a repeat loop, and I'm going to repeat 40 times. And 40 times, I'm going to change the size of the sprite. That is, I'm going to make it grow. So I'm going to go to looks, and I'm going to say change size by 10. And at the same time, I'm going to make it rotate. So I'm going to go to motion, and I'm going to turn right. I'm going to say turn right by 3 degrees. So now if I click this block, you will see a small animation here that will grow this sprite from the center of the screen, make it larger, and also rotate. So something like this. Now, after the sprite is grown, we will not make it grow anymore, but we are going to make it rotate a little bit. So I'm going to add yet another repeat loop. So I'm going to snap this one inside. And I'm going to go to control. I'm going to add another repeat loop, and I'm going to repeat 15 times. And I'm going to simply turn right by 3 degrees. So I'm going to go to motion and drag the turn right block. So I'm going to turn right by 3 degrees. So if you click on this repeat block, it will turn just as it did earlier, and it will turn around just by a tiny amount, so maybe a second or so. And after that, we will make this sprite shrink in size and then keep on rotating. And the shrinking part is very similar to the growing part. And so I'm going to right click on this first repeat section. So I'm going to right click on that, and I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to have yet another one. And I'm going to snap them in the following order. The first repeat block, the second repeat 15 with just the turning right, and then the third repeat loop with changing size by, and I'm going to use -10 here, so I'm going to make the sprite shrink in size this time around and keep on rotating. So now if I hit the flag, notice the animation with the first sprite. So it will grow from the center of the screen, and then it will shrink back to its original size at 1%. So make it slightly invisible. But you can tweak the numbers here, and if you want the sprite to stay on the screen a little bit longer, you can increase this number for the second repeat loop. You can increase that to 30 or to 25 or a larger number than 15, and it will stay on the screen for a little bit longer before shrinking back. All right, now here's the thing. We want to repeat this effect for many clones of this original sprite. So we are going to have to create clones every time. So we are going to create maybe 1 clone per second, or maybe multiple clones per second. And every single clone will have to do exactly the thing that I described here in the first script. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to detach everything that we programmed so far for the original sprite, and we're going to keep it just like that. And we're going to program clones to do what we wrote in this script. And for the original sprite, sprite 1, we're going to make it hidden and make it create clones. So I'm going to go to looks, and I'm going to say hide. So when the flag is clicked, this sprite with the 4 dots is going to be hidden from screen. And then I'm going to go to control, and I'm going to add a forever loop. And forever, I'm going to make the computer generate clones with which I'm going to program this exact script. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add a wait block, and I'm going to wait 1 second for now. We're going to change this interval a little bit later. And then I'm going to scroll down in this light orange section, and I'm going to add this create clone of myself and add it right under wait. So right underneath wait, I'm going to create a clone of this sprite with the 4 dots. And every single sprite, every single clone, when it's created on the screen, it will be programmed like this by adding this starter block when I start as a clone. So this dangling script that I created earlier, I'm going to start when the clone appears on the screen. So once I hit the flag, the original sprite, sprite 1, is going to keep on creating clones of itself. And by the way, when a clone appears, it will be also hidden as the original sprite, so we will need to show it on screen. So I'm going to click on the purple look section, and I'm going to drag in show and drag it here when I start as a clone. So now that I hit the flag, notice the effect that's going to happen on the screen. So I'm going to hit the flag, and after a second, clones of this original sprite with the 4 dots are going to keep appearing on screen. And this will carry on forever because I have a forever loop. So this is the first start of the animation that we are going to create. Now, every single clone will need to take on a different color. And so inside this forever loop, I'm going to change the color of the original sprite. So I'm going to drag this change color effect from the look section, and I'm going to drag it at the end of the forever loop. So I'm going to say change color effect by either 25 or 20. I'm going to use 20 for this example. So every new clone will have a different color, and now if I hit the flag, every single clone will have a different color. All right, so this is the kind of effect that we are going to create. But the clones are creating a little bit rarely, and we want to create clones a little bit more often. And so I'm going to wait a smaller amount of time. So I'm going to say 0.2 seconds, which is 5 times as fast. So I'm going to say 0.2 seconds, and now clones are going to be created much, much quicker. All right, so we now have this spiral of new clones that are being created here on the screen. And right now this is pretty awesome as it is, but we are going to also turn this sprite by a certain amount at every single clone creation. So I'm going to go to the motion section, and I'm going to turn right by, say, 10 degrees. So now we're going to see a different kind of pattern. So notice the kind of spiral that's going to be created here. It looks like a flower, it looks like a clover. All right, and all the petals here are of a different color, and these dots change color all the time. All right, so this is already looking pretty awesome. Now, at the end of the script of the clones, the script starting with when I start as a clone, we need to add a last block here to remove the clones from view, because at some point Scratch will not allow us to create any more clones if we wait long enough. So I'm going to go to Control, the light orange section, and I'm going to pick this last block, delete this clone, and I'm going to add it at the end of the script. So right now we have this effect over here that looks like a clover, and this is a flower-like animation with colored dots that look like a rainbow. This is awesome already. Now, at the end of this video, I'm going to show you how you can modify this effect such that the sprite looks a little bit differently and looks like a flower itself. And by this, we're going to use the fisheye effect that we may not have seen before. And I'm going to show you what the fisheye effect does. So I'm going to make a small demonstration. You don't have to do this on your own project. I'm going to click on choose a sprite, and I'm going to add a sprite here from the Scratch catalog. I'm going to take the Scratch Tours bus just to show you how the fisheye effect looks like. So I'm going to go to looks, and I'm going to say set color effect to 0, and instead of color I'm going to select fisheye. Now the fisheye effect looks something like this. If I set the fisheye effect to 0, then the sprite looks in its natural state. If I set the fisheye effect to an amount bigger than 0, for example 50, then the effect will be something like this, as if you were looking through a magnifying glass or something like that. So the bigger fisheye is, the more pronounced this effect is going to be, and the maximum effect is 100. So if you change the fisheye effect to 100, then this is the maximum effect that you can get. And this looks as if you're watching the sprite through a magnifying glass or through a fish eye. Alright, now if you set fisheye effect to a negative value, let's set it back to 0 so that you could get accustomed to how the sprite looks like in real life. So this is the natural state of this sprite. If I set the fisheye effect to a negative value like -50, then you'll have the opposite effect, as if the center of the sprite is not bulging out towards you, but it's bulging inwards towards itself. So something like this. So this will be the effect of fisheye if you set a negative value to it. So let me run a small experiment here. I'm going to run a forever loop, and I'm going to drag when flag clicked. And instead of setting the fisheye effect to -50, I'm going to create a variable. And this is what I recommend you do for your project as well, because we're going to use the variable for our animation. So I'm going to go to variables, and I'm going to make a variable. I'm going to call this effect. I'm going to click for all sprites, and I'm going to hit on OK. Now, this effect, I'm going to set this effect to 0. Actually, I'm going to leave it as a slider for you to control. And instead of setting the fisheye effect to a constant value like -50, I'm going to set fisheye to the variable effect. So whatever the value of effect is going to be, the fisheye effect will take this exact value. And notice that on the scene here, you have a control or a display for effect. I want you to double click on it, and the control has changed. Double click on it again, and you will have a slider. And the slider here will allow you to set the value of effect in real time as the application is running. So let me click on the first sprite for a second and disconnect the first script. And I'm going to connect it back just for you to see how the fisheye effect looks like on this bus. So right now we have the effect equal to 0. So if I hit the flag, the bus is in its natural state. But if I scroll, or if I drag the slider all the way to 100, notice that the bus is bulging around like the magnifying glass effect that I told you about earlier. So this is how you can set the effect. Now, you can also set the effect to a negative value if you know how to set up this slider. So I'm going to right click on the slider, and I'm going to click on change slider range, and I'm going to say minimum value is equal to -100, which is the minimum value of the fisheye effect. And I'm going to leave the maximum value to 100, and I'm going to hit on OK. Now notice that the slider has changed. The number 0 is in the middle of the slider this time around. And if you crank the slider all the way to the right, you'll get the same effect that I showed you earlier with a bulging effect. And if you drag it all the way to the left, notice how distorted the sprite is going to be. And if you set the effect to -100, it's like you collapsed this slider into hyperspace or something like that. So it's really, really funny. All right, so we're going to use this fisheye effect to create various looks for our sprite animations. All right, so this is how the fisheye effect is going to look like. Now, I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to detach the forever loop. And in the project that I'm going to attach in the video description, you'll also have access to this bus effect that you can inspect and analyze. All right, so I'm now going to go back to my original sprite with the 4 dots. I'm going to connect my script that I disconnected earlier, and I'm going to set the fisheye effect inside the forever loop. So I'm going to go to looks, and I'm going to set the color effect, and I'm going to change that to fisheye. So I'm going to set the fisheye effect to, and right now it's 0, but I'm going to go to the orange variable section, and I'm going to drag in effect. So the fisheye effect to the amount dictated by this variable, and the color effect is going to be intact, so the rest of the script will stay the same, only the fisheye effect will be different. Now I'm also going to click on the city bus, and I'm going to hide it from view, so I'm going to click on this cut out eye over here, which is the invisibility slider or control here, so that the city bus doesn't impact our animation over here. And sprite number 1, the 4 dots animation, will have the entire screen for itself. So right now when I hit the flag, notice that we have the same animation that we created earlier, and now if you can crank up the effect, the shape of those bubbles is going to be a little different. So instead of circles, you will have these distorted ovals over there, like the petals of a flower. And if you crank the effect a little bit lower to the left, you'll have this very, very interesting effect where you'll have a very colored flower rotating in front of your eyes. And if you crank it all the way to the left, you'll have a very spiky kind of effect for those of you who like this kind of colored effect as well. So you can go ahead and play around with these effects. You can change the slider in real time, and you can have mixed effects if you want. But all in all, this is the kind of colored effect that I wanted you to create for this video. I hope you like it. So I'm Daniel, and I teach kids to code here at Coder Prodigy. I have many courses on programming for kids in Scratch and JavaScript and Python and many other programming languages. So if you like this video, go ahead and click the like button for me and subscribe to the channel. More videos like this are incoming. And if you're a parent, go ahead and follow me on Twitter and LinkedIn. I post fresh updates on upcoming material and views on education and coding for kids and preparing them for the future. I'm Daniel, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.